Sunday night edition of the Crash the Pond podcast. Jake, I'm going to tell you something right now that I only get to tell you once a year. Are you ready for this?
I'm very concerned because this is not we actually put together a script for this one, like an actually fully written out script instead of just us two knowing what we're going to talk about, and this is not on the script. So I'm
Yeah.
confused and scared.
Yeah, I'm really just going out of left field here. Happy Pi Day. It is in fact Pi Day
Ah.
today. 3
Although
point
al-
3.14.
although for most people listening to this, it won't be Pi Day anymore.
Yes, but it is still Pi Day today, and I figured I'd just wish you a happy Pi Day because you
Thank
are
you.
you are an engineer
I am.
in your professional life,
I
and you
am.
know that the number pi actually holds some significance to you. So
There it.
extending my warmest wishes to you.
I use it to calculate the area of different things like reinforcement and all of that type of fun
Yeah.
stuff.
How many decimals of pi can you name? I feel like we need to know this.
3.14. That's probably it. That's all I got.
Really?
There's only so many significant numbers that you need to go to in engineering because, I mean, at a certain point, you're rounding.
3.14, 159, 5426. All right, I give up.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
that's as far as I know.
Yeah. For me, I just need to round to like basically the closest like inch squared for most things. So yeah,
I mean that sounds important.
yeah.
Um, anyway, just that the topic of pi has certainly come up on this show in the past, so I figured I'd dig up some old bones here. But we've got plenty on the show to talk about today, folks. So strap yourselves in because this is going to be a bit of a mammoth of an episode here. So
Yeah, I'm already seeing people in the Twitch chat looking forward to a rant from me. And last week I had the request from people and I didn't really have a great one in me. This week I don't have it planned, but there is definitely one in me this week.
well, so we'll get into why you may go on a rant, but the Ducks did play a few games this week, so we will talk about those. But really, the only logical place where we can start, or at least to me, the only logical place that we can start is all of the rumors, all of the reports that have come out this week from very reliable sources. I mean, at the Athletic, Elliot Friedman, even Eric Stevens getting some reports in there. So the Ducks, with the way their season has gone, with the way that they're spiraling out of the playoff picture, of course, names are going to come up in trade conversations. And these are names that we've talked plenty about on the show here, namely Rickard Rakell, Josh Manson, Adam Henrique. And it kind of is starting to feel like it's all coming to a head here with these names.
Yeah, it definitely does. It feels like something's got to give at some point. We'll get into the games a little bit more later in this episode. But I mean, not to let the cat out of the bag, the Ducks lost a couple of games this week, and they have only won 2 games in their last 10. They have, I think, won 5 games in regulation all season, is the stat I found today, which is second worst in the league behind Buffalo at fourth. And so it's feeling like they're getting to a point where something's got to give. Every time that it feels like rock bottom has come, there's another level to go lower for this team. And so it feels like something's going to happen. Something's got to give soon, and we have the trade deadline coming up now officially in less than a month. April 12th is when the trade deadline is, and this could be a season where you see activity happening a little bit earlier than usual coming up to the trade deadline, mainly due to the fact that, especially if you're trading with a Canadian team, the guy's going to have to quarantine for 14 days. And so a Canadian team that's making a trade for a guy to kind of come in and help them in their potentially either in their push for the playoffs, if that's the case, then they're going to want to get them as soon as possible. And even if they are in a locked-in spot, like looking at Toronto, for instance, which is a team that we may bring up again later, even if they're locked into a playoff spot, basically, they're going to want to get that guy integrated into the roster as soon as possible. So it's not as if they're starting from scratch kind of come playoff time, that they are able to have some leeway or some leadway and be able to get them into their lineup. And so I think we're going to start seeing some moves in the next week or two for both the Ducks and on the whole in the season. I'm not quite sure actually how busy the deadline on the whole is going to be. I think this may be a year where you see some more moves prior to the deadline.
Yeah, I think that everything you said definitely adds up there. Now, looking at the actual report, looking at the the paragraph from Craig Custance here just 2 days ago that really set Twitter on fire, at least Ducks Twitter, what's left of it after all the pitchforks and knives and torches have been out
Oh
and
yeah.
about this
Oh
season.
yeah.
Oh man, it's a beautiful disaster. But so obviously Bob Murray told Eric Stevens of the Athletic and the media that he spoke with recently, he said, I'm openly talking and listening about lots of things. We've got to. So essentially saying, hey, the Ducks are open for business on the trade market. And Rickard Rakell has 12 points in his last 10 games. He's playing some of the best hockey he's ever played, plus he's getting the production for it. But this was the paragraph. So I'll just read it word for word here from The Athletic, just so that everyone knows what we're talking about. As always, it comes down to return. The Ducks are no longer interested in swapping players off their roster for future draft choices, where they'll need to wait 3 seasons or more before they can plug a prospect into their lineup. They're looking for players in the 24 to 27 age range to mesh seamlessly with the maturing youngsters who are gradually finding their NHL way. Any deal involving Rakell would likely be a hockey deal. Given that Anaheim and Boston have developed a trade pipeline of sorts these past few years, and Boston's desperate need for secondary scoring, a Rakell for Jake Debrusk deal might make sense. Debrusk was a healthy scratch recently and could be a candidate for a scenery change. Now, there's a little bit more after that about other candidates, but to me, that is a bombshell right there.
Yeah.
That is a
Yeah.
bombshell. Tell us why.
That's a bombshell because, I mean, it's funny, actually, maybe an hour before that article came out, Pierre LeBrun dropped an article with kind of his potential trades that he could see happening or the trades that he would like to see. And he had actually Rickard Rakell to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And basically, he said that the Rakell, let's see here really quickly. For me, it starts with the Leafs offering Rodion Mirov, and still that probably wouldn't be enough. Toronto would need to add another asset in the package. So it's funny because of the conflict that's going on here. You have Pierre LeBrun stating that. And now, granted, this is Pierre LeBrun's opinion. And I think that that's a key distinction to make here. This is Pierre LeBrun's speculation/opinion versus, I believe, Craig Custance's article is more so based on information he's receiving, and he's receiving information that the Ducks are no longer interested in swapping players for future draft choices. So kind of breaking it all down, I think Pierre LeBrun is thinking through it of a lens of what the Ducks should do, and Craig Custance is coming at it with information of what they probably are going to do. And I mean, here's the key thing here. If the Ducks are intent on trading Rickard Rakell, and they do it for a guy that is 24 to 27 years of age, I mean, let's lay it out there. Rickard Rakell is a good player for the Ducks right now. Even if they got back a Rickard Rakell, does that make a difference? Does that change anything? If they got back a Rickard Rakell that's 2 years younger than him, does that change anything for this franchise? Does that move the needle for this franchise? Does that change anything 4 or 5 years down the line? No. It's the same exact situation they're in now. So what good does it do for you to move a Rickard Rakell if that's going to be the return? You're getting essentially the same player back that you have right now, and there's no actual added benefit to the long-term plan. Rickard Rakell is, I believe, 27 years old right now? 28. I think he's turning 28 in May. I don't know if you can look that up really quickly as I'm going over this, but the fact that
he's 27.
Yeah,
turning 28 in May.
He's 27. So you're looking at a guy 2 to 3 years younger than him. Like, that is not a vast difference between the two of them. Yes, it does help because he does get younger, and I think that does eventually help because you'll have better prime age scoring. But at the end of the day, you're not making any difference to this roster. You're not changing anything for this roster. You're not making them better now. You're not necessarily making them better in the future. So what are you accomplishing really by doing this deal in a quote-unquote hockey trade? You're not accomplishing anything. You're really not. You're doing exactly what he's done with
Jake throwing up the air quotes.
Yeah,
it's getting real
with every single trade he's made. With every trade he's made of late, basically. Besides, I mean, basically, if you take out Montour, if you take out Kasha, and you take out kind of the fringe type rebuilding deals, which are important, and I give Bob Murray credit for doing those. But you look at Heinen for Ritchie. You look at Pettersson for Sprong for Juice. The reported Heinen for Virtanen trade that he was looking at doing. All of these things are essentially changing guys from one team to another, and it's not actually making a difference because all you're doing is shuffling the deck chair. You're taking this deck chair and putting it over here and pulling this other one back here that may be a little bit newer, maybe a little bit fresher coat of paint, but at the end of the day, it's still a deck chair and it's not going to change anything. Instead, what the Ducks need to do is, if you're going to move Rickard Rakell, actually do it, and do it for the right reason. Like, this feels as if they're just moving Rickard Rakell to make the fan base happy, to show, hey, see, we did end up doing a rebuilding type move. We moved Rickard Rakell, but you're not actually accomplishing anything. Get a pick, get a young roster player, get a first-round pick, and Rodion Amirov. That makes a difference to this roster. Build this roster around Trevor Zegras. That is what they need to do. I mean, I didn't think there would be a rant this early, but oh boy, that was a good one.
I'm pretty sure that was a rant. I think that qualifies. I think that qualifies
like,
as a rant.
But it's baffling. Like, how can you decide to do?
Well, I think, if I may,
Go for
it. I think that there are also some faulty assumptions underlying this decision-making process. This is something I'm trying to write about right now, is that part of the thought process seems to be that they want someone in that 24 to 27 age range to mesh seamlessly with the maturing youngsters who are gradually finding their NHL way. I have a question. Who are these maturing youngsters? How many Ducks youngsters are actually good enough at the point now to where you can plan these big franchise-defining moves around them? Like, let's go down the list. Max Comtois, I think very clearly he's established himself as an NHL player this season. Maybe he won't be a star, but he is an NHL player. That much we can say. I think Max Jones, if he's not there, he's like an inch away from being that. And then after that, who else is there? Isaac Lindestrom, I know he had a hat trick. I know that, there's the cool story that his girlfriend moved over and now he's more comfortable in North America, but he's still not that good.
Yeah.
He actually still doesn't do much for this team. He is okay defensively, and maybe in time he'll become an okay player, but he's not a guy that I think you can, again, build these decisions around. Sam Steele might just not be an NHL player. Like right now, he might just not be that. And just going down the list, continuing, Josh Mahura, okay, maybe, the results are hit or miss with him. And then, of course, Trevor Zegras. But I think Trevor Zegras is always in this equation no matter what.
Trevor Zegras is also of a different age range, I think, than those guys.
Yes. So anyway, the larger point there was simply that if the Ducks have this newfound confidence in their youngsters to the point where they don't want to kick the can that far down the road, that seems like faulty logic to me.
Well, it's also a lack of player evaluation, or poor, not lack of, it's poor player evaluation. It's exactly the same type of situation that got into making the Nick Ritchie trade and saying he needed a change of scenery because you thought he was playing poorly for you. And in reality, maybe adjust your expectations. Don't expect Nick Ritchie. I mean, it would have been great. Nick Ritchie was a 10th overall pick. I think it was valid for people to think that he would become a first-line talent. But I think a year or two in, you need to change that opinion of him. He's not that. And I think and by judging him by that standard, you're doing him a disservice and you're doing your team a disservice by doing that. And I think that is part of the issue that's happening here is Bob Murray is doing the same exact thing that he did with Nick Ritchie that he is doing with these kids. He is putting on them all of these expectations, and it's doing not only them a disservice, it's doing the roster a disservice. And I mean, if you expect these guys, I mean, you and I have said this since the very beginning. I mean, this is going way back in the Anaheim calling days, but we had Jeff Merrick on this show, right? And when we asked him back then, this was before any of these guys had played in the NHL. This was before any of these guys played in the AHL. He agreed that none of these guys would be top of the lineup players. They would at best be second liners. They're not going to be the guys that you build the team around. And that evaluation that you and I have held and that Merrick said on this very podcast, like that has held, and that has been how they've been. And the Ducks have misevaluated their own players if they've thought otherwise. And to me, that's kind of what this is showing, is that they've missed their evaluation and they're still continuing to miss their evaluation of these players.
It also shows to me that a lot of the evaluation is based on points, like just goals and assists, because Max Comtois leads the team in scoring. And for some people that might seem like, wow, he is the best player. He's one of the very best players in this team. He's an elite level player. And I think he's been good, but that does not tell the whole story and probably overstates part of the story. Isaac Lindestrom, he has 7 points in 22 games, but I do think they're fixating on his 5 goals and the fact that that a lot of those have come as of late. Sam Steele has, he has 9 points, but he also has a 56% face-off percentage. And I just feel like those are the kinds of things that they're probably factoring in here. And to be quite honest, those are very misleading and incomplete forms of evaluation. Of course, there's probably the eye test, although the eye test is certainly not kind to Sam Steele at this point in time. So that was the big one. That to me really turned on the alarms, started the red flags waving, just because, like we've said, and like you has so eloquently put in
Thank
that
you.
rant,
Thank you.
yeah, no tongue in cheek there whatsoever.
Hey, I thought it was okay.
As you so eloquently put, the Ducks, if they are going to trade Rickard Rakell, who, like you said, is a good player now, you're not doing it because you are looking for a better player or a similar player. You're doing it because you are coming to terms with the fact that the timeline of your team, the way that it's set up, is there's a clash there
Yeah.
currently. There's too many guys on one side of the curve and too many guys on another side of the curve, and you need to figure out that you got to start buying in to that side of the curve with the young players and
Be-
try to feed into that. So by the time that they hit their stride, by the time that they become prime age players, that it all happens at once, as opposed to bring in a guy who's slightly younger, who by the time all these youngsters are going to be good, is probably going to be in the same position, starting to age out a little bit.
So,
So,
and also, for instance, Jake Debrusk is the guy being
well,
mentioned here.
that is truly just a baffling name. I
Like
mean, Jake DeBrusk has not been good this season.
No, he's not been good this season. And I mean, 2 years ago, he put up 27 goals. Last year, put up 19 goals, 16 assists. Like,
Yeah, he scores goals, but I
he-
don't know how much he actually impacts play.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't. But kind of getting beyond the point, I mean, that type of move, I mean, Jake DeBrusk could devalue really quick to the point where in 2 to 3 years, you're in this, basically I mean, here's the best way to put it. If they were to move Rickard Rakell for Jake DeBrusk, all they're essentially doing is kicking the can down the line. Because you're going to end up with this same situation with Jake DeBrusk in 2 to 3 years, when he is going to be potentially an unrestricted free agent, and you need to make the decision: do you move him or do you keep him? Do you sign him or do you don't? And so all this, all this would do in a like for like hockey trade is kick the can down the road. It makes no difference for the roster now.
Well, you're also. I actually sort of disagree with that.
Okay.
I think you're actually making your team worse.
Well, sorry. Yes, you are actively
Like,
making your team worse, but my point there was that you are kicking the can down the road in terms of having the roster player. If they're concerned about the fact that Rakell may leave, like, honestly, this is the only piece of logic that I can come at with this in terms of the reason why you would move him for a roster player. And follow me on this. Rickard Rakell is up for unrestricted free agency, not this summer, but the one after. You would think the Ducks and his agency have had some preliminary conversations, because he's eligible for an extension whenever free agency opens, because it's not July 1st this year. I forget the actual date that it's going to be, but maybe they've had those preliminary discussions already, and they just haven't gone anywhere. And Rakell has said, no, I'm going to leave. I don't want to be here for this. I'm not enjoying what's going on here. Nothing is going the right way. I need I want to leave. And so the only reason they're actually looking to move Rakell is to essentially get a guy that's younger, that's under contract for a little bit longer, under club control for a little longer.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, looking at DeBrusk's contract, he has the exact same deal, except he's an RFA at the end of it.
Exactly.
Same age. So here's the thing. You're paying roughly the same AAV for a markedly less impactful player, like markedly less impactful. Sure, he puts up goals, but if you look at the actual impact he has in the game, he's a good defensive player. He might even be a better defensive player than Rakell is, but he is nowhere near that offensively, and is okay on the power play. I mean, the Bruins tend to produce when he's out there on the power play, but not really the kind of guy that I think fits the bill. It just seems like a weird cost-cutting move that isn't actually not going to,
like I said,
be anywhere close.
It's kicking the can down the road. It's the fact that that's where I'm coming at it with the contract situation, is that they see Rakell coming up in a year. He may not sign. It gives them more cost certainty with a player a couple of years younger, instead of like this. This is the exact type of move that turns the Ducks into the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just, it puts you in this rut where you're just kind of stuck where you are, and there's just not really anywhere. There's no avenue to get out of it. I do find it funny though that, like, part of the evaluation here, part of the reporting is that, well, the Ducks and the Bruins have established a trade pipeline, so here's a very specific deal. It's almost as if the Ducks pigeonhole themselves into trading with specific teams
One
for
other
set periods of time.
one other thing I want to mention. You read this verbatim, the first part of it, but I want to
Mm-hmm.
reread it right now. The Ducks are no longer interested in swapping players off their roster for future draft choices.
Yeah,
How many players have they actually done that with? Like how many? Like I mean, it's
I
Brandon Montour. Brandon
I
Montour.
actually don't think they've ever really done that.
No, I mean they've done it with Brandon Montour, Andre Kasha, I guess Derek Grant, and Michael Delzato.
Yeah, but even the Kasha trade
Yep.
wasn't exactly like
Yep.
just a few because they had to take on Backus,
Yep.
right? And who knows, was the first round pick just because of the fact that the Ducks had to take Backus? Like they haven't really made any purely seller moves. And you could even argue that the Montour deal was a bit of a hockey trade because Gooley was, like an okayish prospect at the time. So who maybe needed a change of scenery. So it's not like that is another baffling aspect of this report is that they're no longer interested in doing that. Were they ever interested? Did they ever do this? It just seems like a
They
very
they could have done it with Silverberg 2 years ago. They could have done it with Manson last year
and
with
and
more
also
value. They could have done it with so many players over the last little bit, and they've decided not to.
well, and also if you think about it, like the trades that if you were to rate the trades that the Ducks have made in the last 2 to 3 years, those trades are actually some of the better ones. Montour for Gooley and a first round pick doesn't look great in hindsight because Gooley is kind of flamed out and Braden Tracy is looking like a so-so prospect. But at the time, it was really good value for
Yeah,
Brandon
it
Montour, who
was
was
really
kind of
good.
this, who was a struggling defenseman, but still had some name recognition. And for the Andre Kasha trade, yeah, you had to take on David Backus's deal, but in theory, the Ducks could still flip David Backus, and you got a first round pick, which turned into Jacob Perreault, who I think will be a very good prospect. But even at the time, when we were evaluating the trade, even though I know you didn't love the value play as much, getting that first round pick is still
Yeah,
something that you can hang your hat on.
like
And
they
so, but if you look at the other trades they've made, they've just been giant misses.
it's shuffling deck chairs. I mean,
Yeah,
it's the exact type of deal that they're trying to do with Rickard Rakell. Like it's those exact type of moves that they've made, and it's led to nowhere. Like
yeah.
and so now that we're kind of through Rickard Rakell, I do want to briefly mention one other thing that came out, which was the fact that on Rickard Rakell, Eric Stevens had a report earlier in the week where he was talking to a longtime NHL executive. And it's funny because this executive says he would give up a absolute minimum. He would get a first round pick or give up a first round pick and a top prospect, or at minimum,
Yeah.
that's what the Ducks should get for him. So
Yeah.
it's not as if Rickard Rakell won't get you a return like that, like a first round pick and Rodion
That,
Amirov.
that's why if you trade Rickard Rakell for Jake Debrusk straight up, you're basically getting like 50 cents in the dollar at
Yeah.
best. I don't know. I don't even know what the translation there would be, but it's like you have this very valuable trade chip and you just
Well,
gotta maximize it.
at the end of the day, people are gonna say, "Why would you make the Ducks worse? The Ducks are bad. How does that make it like? Why would you trade one of their best?"
If you're Boston and the Ducks
Well,
call you and say, yeah, we really want DeBrusk, you don't put the phone down until the trade has been made
I
because that's a gift to you.
Yeah. I just want to briefly mention because there were people in both yours and my mention this week basically trying to say, why would you move Rakell in the first place? And the fact that he would age fine with this roster and all this different type of stuff. And I mean,
Contract.
yeah, it's contract. I mean, here's the thing. Eric Stevens, and we'll get into our own trade tiers that we'll come up with. Eric Stevens said it in his thing that both Jakob Silverberg and Adam Henrique are untradeable right now because of their deals. They're in year 2 of their contracts that they got in their UFA status. Rickard Rakell will be in that same boat. So why are we going down that same path of giving another player that type of deal when you're already a bad team? The Ducks need to start rebuilding this roster around Trevor Zegras. The next time the Ducks are competitive, truly competitive, it's going to be with Trevor Zegras at the helm, him leading the way. So you need to rebuild the roster around him. I get that some people want to have older players on this roster, so keep one of Adam Henrique or Jakob Silverberg. They're already
Keep the
under
guys
contract.
you can't move, basically.
Yeah, exactly. They're already under contract.
And I think
rebuild this roster.
Silverberg's been okay this year.
But I mean, picture this: the Ducks. The trade I've been thinking of is Nick Robertson, just because I have preference to him. I think he would be a great fit on this Ducks team. It would be really hard to get him, but that's the name I keep coming back to. The Ducks would be set up for. I mean, it could be next year potentially. Having a
Well, yeah.
line, having a line of Nick Robertson, Trevor Zegras, and Jacob Perreault.
Well, that's the thing is that
Like
if
you have your first line from that.
yeah, well, part of the thought, another assumption underlying this argument is that, well, if you go down this rabbit hole of trading for a pick and a prospect, you're basically engaging yourself in a 2 to 3 year deal, and you're just not going to see any return until a couple of years. And it's like that doesn't have to be true. Why is it? Why is it just a given
The
here that it's going to take 3 years to see any return on a deal like that? That
Nick,
seems a little harsh.
the Leafs didn't let Nick Robertson go to the World Juniors because they thought that he was going to play for them at the start of the year. He just got hurt before the season. Yeah, I get it. I doubt Toronto wants to trade Robertson. But, I mean, here's the logic behind there for me is the Leafs are never going to have a better chance to win a cup than this year. Rickard Rakell makes them better than Nick Robertson does right now. So they pay for the now, and they have to pay a hefty price for that. I mean, it's possible they don't do it. It's possible I'm overvaluing Rickard
Well,
Rakell.
I mean, would
But
they rather give up Robertson or Amirov?
it
I
does
mean, this
like either
this is now
way.
in the weeds a little bit, but
Yeah, either way. I mean, who knows which one they'd rather give up? I mean, they're
the
both
issue
good
with
players.
Amirov is the KHL factor, and
Yeah,
I don't know his status. So, and of course, if I am even thinking that, you could bet your ass that Bob Murray's thinking that.
yeah.
So
So
difficult.
to round this out, the other names that were listed in Custens's piece were Danton Heinen, like the names we've talked about: Danton Heinen, Adam Henrique, and maybe Jakob Silverberg. Adam Henrique would be the Ducks eating a large percentage of the contract, and then the name also on a lot of the trade big boards. It's really for the Ducks on the trade big boards. It's basically Rickard Rakell and Josh Manson, and we'll get into this in a bit when we get into
It's interesting to see Manson's name just kind of firmly there.
Yeah, I mean,
Because you don't see anybody else's name on the Ducks on this board. And now, of course, I don't know how much we should take it for, as gospel that this board is to be trusted. But I mean, these are people that are well connected, very sourced in the NHL, and they're not just putting this out there haphazardly. And so, Rickard Rakell's number 2 and Josh Manson's number 4. Like he's not that far behind. So if the Ducks can get out of both Rakell and Manson and they do it in the correct manner where they go and get picks and prospects, they could be very well set up for the next couple.
And we talked about this a lot on our Patreon episode. So if you want really the deep dive into the numbers behind it all, go listen to our Patreon episode. But there's been a lot of talk, including us here. Like I'm calling us out in the process. Like we are not absolved from this.
What did we do?
We have said like the Ducks have a lot of cap space next summer. That cap space actually isn't that much, even though that the number looks great right now. It's 21.93 million cap space. The amount of players they have to sign next year essentially eats away all of that cap space. So even though, yes, there is that big number of 21.9, the amount of players they have signed as part of that kind of number, like, is not a significant amount. Yeah. So in order just to sign their own players,
they still don't have really a backup goalie, and they probably want to bring back Ryan Getzlaf. So yeah, it's not like it's actually not all rosy as we once thought.
Yeah. So I think that's a key piece. So moving out money, like moving out Rickard Rakell, moving out a guy like Josh Manson.
That's almost $8 million.
If you can move out Jakob Silverberg, that moves out even more money. Like these are all things that are important. So
yes.
All of that being said, you want to get into the final piece of trade rumors, and then we'll get into some trade tiers. With basically, we'll run through players, say move, don't move, and what we think the return could be.
Yes. Give me the final piece.
The final piece was last night on Saturday Night Headlines. Elliot Friedman mentioned that Troy Terry, and it was unclear if this is coming potentially from a player agent or potentially from the Ducks or other teams looking to move him, but Troy Terry is on the trade block for the Ducks, and Eric Stevens refuted that slightly. I will just kind of say this. Elliot Friedman is one of the most plugged in people in all of hockey. He would not have reported that if he had not heard that from various different people. So I will say where there is smoke, there's probably fire there.
Well, so to be very clear, because I think that's important when we're having these conversations, is to really sift through the information. Elliot Friedman's report didn't really indicate whether the team was shopping him, whether he was looking for whether the player was looking for a change of scenery, like you alluded to with the agent. So we don't necessarily know where that's coming from. But here are the facts. The Ducks have scratched Troy Terry repeatedly this season, despite him playing very well. I mean, the numbers show that he's a very impactful player. He's a great defensive player. He has produced lately offensively. He's scored some beautiful goals, and yet he's still been scratched. So even if maybe the Ducks want to refute that through their own channels, I think that they can't really. You can't overlook you can't rule out the possibility that they are shopping him because of their actions, because of the way that they've handled Troy Terry this season.
Yeah,
So I think that that's completely fair game.
And here's kind of my slight issue kind of with the thought process behind moving Troy Terry. And all we have to go off
well, yes. We haven't even touched that yet.
All we have to go off of here is essentially history. We don't have any other information except for Friedman's report. So all we can go off of is that, along with Bob Murray's history, which is when he's moved these younger players, it's been in a quote unquote hockey trade. It's been in a
1-for-1 swap.
A 1-for-1 swap, not a bigger deal overall. And so obviously when that news first broke, I was pissed off. Like there's no way around it.
Just picture Jake throwing the remote at the TV.
Troy Terry's a guy that I've been a fan of for a while. It's a guy that we have seen kind of grow and prosper. He's a guy that I think gets shit on way too much by a lot of people. He's a guy that at his cap hit of 1.45 brings you positive on ice play. He's not becoming the first line talent that we maybe thought he might be able to become. You agreed with this. I would say that you agreed that he had the potential to get there. I'm lumping you in.
No, well, okay, so I actually still think he can be.
Okay, fair enough.
Sure. But when I hear first line talent, I think like an actual top line player. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
I think he can play on a top line and make that line better.
Okay,
yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So, having said that, even if he is just what he is now, at 1.45 million, that brings you a lot of value. Even if he's only putting up 20 or 30 points throughout the season, having a guy that makes 1.45 million, that's solid in his own zone, can drive play towards the other team's net, and is not a liability out there when they're on the ice.
And is a good power play player.
Yeah,
too.
like that is valuable at 1.45 mil. And so if that's all he is for the rest of his career, like that's a person of value for the team. And that's not necessarily saying that he's this untouchable. I think the Ducks only have 2 untouchables right now. But to me, the main issue that would be behind moving him is that that's not the right guy to move. Like, you should be looking to move your older guys. And this is the big if it's Troy Terry in a move for a like for like type of trade, in a move for someone in a similar position to him, like that's a quote unquote change of scenery trade to shake up the room.
Well, the thing is, Troy Terry, the only change of scenery he needs is to be on the actual ice more in an Anaheim Duck sweater, is to be in the press box less often, because when he's on the ice, he plays very well.
Exactly. So it's a situation where I think the logic is missing in terms of player evaluation, but I don't necessarily think moving him's the worst idea in the world.
It's not a cardinal sin if you trade him. You could get like, hell, if the Ducks trade Troy Terry and get like a second round pick,
go for it.
That's not a bad situation.
I agree.
But the thought process there is a little... it's troubling.
Well, it's the issue I think both you and I have with it is that it goes down the same rabbit hole.
They're also not getting a second round pick for Troy Terry.
It goes down the same rabbit hole of why would you move Marcus Pettersson for Daniel Sprong? Why would you move Daniel Sprong for Christian Juice? Why would you move Nick Ritchie for Danton Heinen? Why would you move Devin Shore for Sonny Milano? Like, some of those, sure, they end up fine in terms of what you get, and you may win those.
Some of those were okay.
No, but that's kind of my point, is that on this, like, that's the important thing to say here. Some of those were okay. But even then, even the ones that were okay, it's not as if they're making this massive impact. They're very much these on the peripheral moves that don't actually make an impact on the roster.
Well, I would push back on that slightly.
Okay.
Not so much to, like, I think your thought process is sound that, yeah, like, they're not big impact moves. But at the same time, like, the Ducks have brought in players like, I mean, this is really about Daniel Sprong. Like, Daniel Sprong was good, and they just didn't let him play.
Yes, no doubt.
And so that also goes into the fact that if you're going to bring in guys via trade, give them a real opportunity to demonstrate their talent.
But my point with this is, what did that really accomplish Pettersson for Sprong? It's not as if the Ducks could use Marcus Pettersson right now. It's not as if
they could use Daniel Sprong.
Yeah, true. They could use Christian Juice also.
They could use Christian Juice.
But it's that kind of logic path, though, where, I mean, kind of at the end of the day, sure, those trades may be good.
I didn't have a huge issue with Pettersson for Sprong.
So
I had more of an issue with Sprong for Juice.
But to go back to it, does are those the types of moves that get you out of this rebuild, that
No,
repurpose
no,
this
that
roster? And I
yes,
think that is
I agree with you on that.
the overarching thing here, is that moving Troy Terry in a like for like move is
They're past that.
it's
Like they're past that kind of trade.
it shows it's a problematic viewpoint of things. And I think the big problem, like it's a problem, right?
I agree with you. I
So,
agree with you. I think we're talking about the same thing, but just from different semantic
yep,
points of view.
yep.
Um, okay, well, I think maybe before we get into our trade tiers, I mean, we're over 30 minutes in. Should we maybe talk about our sponsor today?
Let's go for it. Let's go for it. You
Okay.
so everyone, Mack Weldon is a premium men's essential brand that believes in smart designs and high quality fabrics. Mack Weldon offers a one-stop shop for men's basics, from socks, shirts, hoodies, underwear, polos, and active shorts, basically whatever you need. Mack Weldon has you covered. Unlike the assortment of department store brands that make up your top drawer, all of Mack Weldon's basics have a consistent fit that you can count on. So, I mean, Felix, what have you liked? I mean, you and I are both big fans of Mack Weldon at this point in time. We both have a fair amount of Mack Weldon gear at this point in time. I actually am wearing the Ace sweatpants as we speak. This was not actually done on purpose. It is just because I love the Ace sweatpants so much, and they are very comfortable that I decided to put them on, and it's a little bit chilly in my apartment today as we are still in a little bit of a cold spell. Granted, not that cold in the reality of the world, but very, very perfect. But I mean, what have been some of your favorite products from them?
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, I think the two things to really point out here with Mack Weldon is the versatility of the products and the actual fabric technology. But just in terms of the products that I've really enjoyed, the Ace sweatpant has been fantastic. To me, the one that really kind of encapsulates everything, though, is the Radius pant. So, as someone who works from home, as someone who's really busy, and I try to get my workouts in during the day. The Radius pants, what they allow you to do is basically you can look put together, at any point in time. They look like kind of business casual pants, but they have that technology, that air knit technology, to where you can also go and work out in them. That they're stretchy. I've squatted in those pants, and they've held up to my tiny squat totals there. So highly recommend those. You've talked about the Ace sweatpant. Those are extremely comfortable, just buttery smooth, really. And I'm actually wearing the Sunday lounge pant right now. So just a little Sunday touch that I try to go for here to really set the
Yeah,
mood.
and I mean, one thing also with Mack Weldon is they have some body mapping technology and fabric mesh zones in their new Stealth boxer briefs that deliver enhanced breathability and support that are perfect for your everyday wear or to be layered underneath workout gear. And so, I mean, their boxer briefs for workout are also absolutely
Extremely
fantastic.
extremely comfortable.
Extremely,
I don't know how they do it, but as someone with like sensitive skin too, their materials are so soft. Like it's actually insane. I don't know how they do it.
it's absolutely amazing. Like their socks are also great. I'm someone who likes having a variety of different socks with different color palettes on them, and they provide a lot of different ones for you if you're looking for some dress socks that can go nice with some dress shoes. You can wear them also if you just want to wear them with sneakers. They work really well. So a lot of awesome products from Mack Weldon, and they also have their Weldon Blue totally free loyalty program. Level 1 gets you free shipping for life. Once you reach level 2 by spending $200, you get 20% off every order for the next year. And Mack Weldon wants you to be comfortable, so if you don't like your first pair of underwear, you can keep them and they'll still refund you. No questions asked. So, for 20% off your first order, visit mackweldon.com/CTP and enter the promo code CTP. That's mackweldon.com/CTP, promo code CTP for 20% off. Mack Weldon, reinventing men's basics.
Good job, Jake. Good job.
Thank you.
Highly recommend. Like these guys are awesome. They've been a pleasure to work with, and can't recommend their product enough. Okay. Let's let's keep going on here though. We've still got plenty to talk about, folks. Don't you think for a second that we're running out of material here. So Eric Stevens put out an article today, which I do think kind of got the wheels turning in our heads a little bit, particularly for you. I mean, it was probably like 8:30 a.m. and I think you had already texted me about it. I don't
I
know.
technically it was 9:30. Your clock may have said 8:30 because of daylight savings, but
I actually hate daylight savings just today. Just today. It'll be great once,
yeah,
it'll be lighter out.
just do away with actual daylight savings.
Losing
Go
that hour really sucked today.
go
I could
go.
have really used that
We
extra
should have
hour.
never gained the hour in the first place. Just keep us at the same summer schedule.
I mean, sure. You're the math guy here, so I trust you with
Same
the
summer
numbers.
schedule. Give us more sunlight in the afternoon, less sunlight in the morning. That's fine. I'm good with it.
So, okay, so now it'll be darker in the morning,
Yes,
correct?
it will be darker in the morning.
Love that.
Sunnier later in the afternoon. I am happy because I can surf after work again.
I love dark mornings. I don't know why. There's just something about waking up when it's pitch black that just makes me feel alive. Anyway, all right. Just you can surf. That's great. Let's talk about these trade tiers. So Eric Stevens put out an article with some trade tiers, which I think is worth reviewing. I'm not really going to go over whether I agree or disagree with the tiers that much or the reasoning behind them. Let's just go through some names. I mean, this is really just for our own purposes here. We're piggybacking off of it. Let me start here. Who is untouchable on the Ducks?
Untouchable for me. Two players, Trevor Zegras and Jamie Drysdale. That
So you
is
so
it.
you agree with the Iceman?
Yes, I believe that is correct. Those are the only two. Actually,
I'm gonna go further than that to you with where you're going from this. Not
what
necessarily further,
what
actually further back.
well,
Zegras is the only untouchable to me.
I he
I love
mentioned
Jamie Drysdale as a prospect, but he's not a forward.
he mentions it briefly. The only way I would be possibly moving either of them is if it's for a bona fide superstar in Jack Eichel.
Yeah, I mean Zegras is really the only guy that I would have like physical pain
Yeah.
trying like putting into a deal. Like it would like if I wasn't in charge, it would really stress me out to put in Trevor Zegras. Jamie Drysdale, he will go on to be a very good NHL defenseman, but at the end of the day, those are not necessarily as foundational pieces as a true superstar forward. Forwards are more important than defensemen, in my opinion, in terms of just how high of a ceiling your team can have. Okay. So we've established that at most there's two players that are untouchable on this team. Um, there's another tier on here. We'll just use his tiers. I'm sorry, Tarek Stevens, if we're copying a little bit here. Who is the pretty untouchable tier? Is there anyone who's pretty untouchable?
The only pretty untouchable tier, and honestly, this is kind of where I kind of would put Drysdale and Zegras, but we've already established where they're at. Pretty untouchable is probably going to be John Gibson, and that's it.
Yeah. So the thing with Gibson is that even though I do think he's maybe this team's best trade chip, he is on a very reasonable deal. I think that we haven't really gotten the full value of John Gibson in the last couple of years. Not so much because of him, although he has taken some steps back here and there, but mostly just because of the awful environment he's been in. I still think that if behind a credible defense and team, he can be still a very good netminder. So I wouldn't be excited about trading him. But outside of that, I do kind of agree with you that there's no one in there who's pretty untouchable. So here's another one. The only if he wants to leave tier.
It's Ryan Getzlaf, and that's it. I mean, I guess technically I would probably throw Ryan Miller in there, but I don't really know if Ryan Miller gets you anything. Actually, you know what? I think Ryan Miller could actually get you something, and it allows him to.
He's not been good this year,
but he allows him to chase the cup. I mean, I guess you would throw Ryan Miller in there out of respect for him. That only if he wants to leave. So I would have Ryan Getzlaf and Ryan Miller there.
Yeah, I mean that's the tough thing with Eric Stevens writing these kind of articles is that he has to talk to these guys all the time and they read what he writes, or at least the Ducks do. So putting someone's name in a trade category, you got to be careful with that. So yeah. I get it. The untradeable tier. So guys that you just cannot move. Now, I think Cam Fowler is solidly in this category because of his onerous deal, $6.5 million AAV. He's still got he's still got 5 years left on that deal after this year,
and he has a 4-team no trade clause. So basically, it's a 4-team yes list. So he can only get traded to 4 teams in the league.
What if 2 of those teams are Pittsburgh and Boston? Then the Ducks are set.
Yeah. I mean, and here's the thing: a lot of times these players, if they only have a 4-team no trade list, as in 4-team yes list,
Hmm.
what they'll do is they'll go ahead and if they are really want to stay with the Ducks, and it can basically be a no move clause because they'll pick teams
Hmm.
that don't need them, that are
Yeah.
strapped against the cap. And so if Cam Fowler really wants to stay a Duck, he could pick Toronto. He could pick basically teams that cannot take him on.
Yeah.
And basically, if he told his agent would make it that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, with Cam Fowler though, I just think he's impossible to move.
Yeah,
Like it's crazy because I don't think like I actually think he's been fine this season. I think he's been a lot better than I kind of thought, especially looking at some of his numbers. Like you look at his RAPM charts, like they've come down a bit as of late. But he was on a really hot stretch for a while, and the latest games have kind of hurt his numbers a little bit. But he's still a guy that I think he'll age okay. He skates so well, right? That's like part of it here.
yeah, definitely. And I think that skating will
Hmm.
help him out. And the thing is,
Hmm.
his skating has never necessarily been a speed situation. It's kind of more
No,
of an
well,
agility. And
it's
I
the
think that,
fluidity.
and I think
Yeah,
that's something that can last
he
him a
he
while.
he expends very little energy skating, and he hasn't really been injured a ton during his career. And I actually just want to quickly correct something I just said. Like his numbers are almost like just unequivocally great across the board this year.
Yeah, he's
Maybe
been
not
good.
great, maybe not great, but like
They're good.
he's clearly above average in almost every
He's
category.
he's probably been the best Ducks defenseman this year because I think Campus
Uh,
Lindholm hasn't played enough.
yeah, I
I think
mean,
Lindholm has just been injured too much to necessarily consider him that.
well, I think that if you factor in special teams, like especially the power play, then Fowler really surpasses him because Fowler's been good on the power play this year, which has not always been the case for him. Um,
So
anyways, so yeah, he's untradeable. Now, the guys who I think are kind of tricky in this one are Silverberg and Henrique because like we've talked about with Silverberg and Henrique, they are on tough deals to move, but they're not quite as prohibitive as Cam Fowler. There's less term. They've got 3 years left after this year. Henrique's got a 5.825 and Silverberg's got a 5.25. And I do think that those numbers are low enough to where if you are the Ducks, you should consider maybe retaining
yeah,
because if that allows you to get out of it or at least get out of half of it and you get an asset for it and
yep,
potentially a good one because if you're another team like if you're a team that's in its contending window and you can pick up an Adam Henrique or Jakob Silverberg at basically half off and you've only really got and you get 3 runs out of them like there may be some teams that are interested in that.
yeah. I think that
It's
those
still complicated because of the no trade clause though.
I think the untradeable tier, I would have probably only put Cam Fowler in there. I think that the thing with Jack Silver and Adam Henrique is I don't know if anyone would take them on their contract and take their contract fully off the Ducks books. I think that there would have to be
the
set.
genesis of why they're untradeable.
Yeah, and so I think there would have to be some salary retention there on the
Well,
whole.
and is part of the reason that they're in this untradeable category because maybe Eric Stevens knows the Ducks aren't willing to do that? Because if the Ducks are not willing to do that, which now is just me speculating, that would be very rich. That would be very ironic because this is a team that has no problem just kind of throwing money around. I mean, they bought out Corey Perry for what? I'm still not 100% sure. So if the Ducks aren't willing to retain because of some reason, that would be pretty funny to me. Like you're going to pay these guys anyway. Like whether you like it or not, so you might as well find a way to make it work for you in the long term. I mean, the Ducks should absolutely be thinking about doing this if they're not already to retain the full amount.
Yeah, and so I think Cam Fowler is probably the only one that's untradeable, both due to his no trade clause, along with the fact that he signed until 25, the season of 25-26. So I mean,
Yeah.
he signed at $6.5 million for a very very long time, and as we've said a bunch on the show, it's not necessarily AAV that kills you; it's term, and that's the situation there.
So a couple other names in this category, which kind of confused me a little bit. So Kevin Shattenkirk, I don't really know why he'd be untradeable. Like he's on a fairly reasonable contract
Yeah.
that doesn't have a lot of term. I still like he proved last year that on a contender he can be a really solid piece.
Yep.
I think he's been good enough this year with Anaheim. So I actually would. I'm sorry if I'm pushing back now. I don't mean to dump on Eric's piece, but just I would push back a little bit on the notion that he is untradeable. Maybe the Ducks are just not willing to trade him.
Yeah,
Maybe that's what it is.
potentially. And so, yeah, I really think kind of there's one other player in Derek Grant on his list. I think that Derek Grant might be untradeable, but
Well, Grant is untradeable in the sense that I don't know who the hell would want him.
yeah,
He's been awful this year, and he's has
yeah,
inexplicably 2 years left on his deal.
like
Yeah,
he'll be an like I think by if not this year, by next year he'll be an AHLer.
yeah. I mean, he is functionally an AHLer just in the way he plays, but yeah, definitely at some point there will
So
be a come to Jesus moment.
so to circle back, I think you and I both agree Cam Fowler is the only one in this tier
Yeah,
for
the
us.
truly untradeable guy to me is Cam Fowler
Yeah.
because all the other guys you can make a reasonable argument for how to get out of them. I mean, and then of course there's Derek Grant.
By the way, my theory on Fowler, and I've said this to you, and I've said
Mhm.
it maybe on this show. If Bob Murray is the general manager, no way he does this. But if Bob Murray is not the general manager by the expansion draft, what the Ducks should do is look at, and let's just say, for instance, they haven't moved Josh Manson at that point in time. They will potentially lose a Josh Mahura in the expansion draft because of that. Either Josh Mahura or Josh Manson. What I would look to do is actually expose Cam Fowler in the expansion draft, mainly due to the fact that I don't know if Seattle wants to take that contract. And so essentially what you're doing is you're getting an additional protected spot as a result of that. If you've moved Josh Manson prior to the expansion draft, which we should circle back to, is probably the reason why he's on the trade bait list, is that the Ducks probably have viewed him and now view how Josh Mahura has played and want to protect Josh Mahura over Manson, so they're looking to trade him.
Well, and
But
also at some point Jamie Drysdale is going to be a part of this team, and he is a right-handed shot, so
yeah,
that
so
that may
So,
factor in as
so I
much.
think you can potentially look to expose Cam Fowler to Seattle because I don't think Seattle takes him, and so you're getting basically an extra protection spot. I mean, Seattle, I doubt with their analytics department that they're going to want to be saddled with a guy at $6.5 million until the 25-26 season.
But you do need to meet the cap floor. Like you still need
I
to.
I think that they're going to want to take on a guy with a higher AAV and a whole lot less term.
Yeah, that's fair. But I don't know. Like the discourse on Fowler is kind of back and forth. Like there are some people who are pretty smart who seem to really like him.
No,
So
and I think he's great. Like
yeah.
I'm a big Cam Fowler fan. I have a Cam Fowler jersey, but I
So,
just think
some I love how like when you add in I have a jersey, it really like cements the
yeah, it
statement.
does. It does, you know?
Well, I
But
mean, I don't think it's crazy that maybe they talk themselves into it, but
yeah,
that contract is. But they could have the same discussion we're having that maybe he'll age fine and blah blah blah. Anyway, um, okay, the next tier, it's time to rebuild and we need max value in return tier. So yeah, Raquel Manson, yes, a thousand times yes. I mean, I would throw potentially John Gibson's name in here. I know I just said that he's maybe in my untouchables,
well,
but he is a guy who you get a crap ton of value
I
for
mean,
if you move on from him.
Rickard Rakell, Josh
Abs-
Manson,
Absolutely. Because of
and
their contracts.
I would put Jakob Silverberg and Adam Henrique here mainly because their value is just going to get worse. It's not as if their value was higher a year or two ago than it is now, so they should have
Yeah.
moved them then. But their value as of right now will never be. It's just going to get worse as they go on and they
Yeah.
age.
I mean, Raquel and Manson are obvious because of how they have these really affordable deals with almost no term. I mean, you get one more year after this. But yeah, I would definitely throw in Henrique and Silberg, like you just said. It makes sense. Get the maximum value, even if it's a trade. Like this is the thing, even if it's not the return you want, any return is still better than none because, like you just alluded to, their value is not going to go up after this year. It's just going to go down. So get out of it while you can.
And you want the bold take from me?
I always want the bold takes from you.
Also include Hampus Lindholm in that list.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point. He hasn't been popping into my mind because on Cap Friendly is on injured reserve, and so the name just isn't like I have to scroll down to see his name. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it is kind of interesting that Steven sees him as a pretty untouchable because look, Hampus Lindholm's a good defenseman. I think he's kind of shown in the last couple of years he might not be quite as good as maybe he was showing earlier in his career. Still a very solid defensive defenseman, and on a fairly reasonable contract. He's got a year left, but that next contract is what scares me because I don't know how he's going to age. The injury history is starting to pile up a little bit, and he's probably going to want a pretty decent contract. And again, is that a guy you want to sign up for long term?
I mean, if you're Hampus Lindholm, the starting point has to be Cam Fowler for him.
Yeah.
Fowler got 8 times 6.5.
And also, like, are the Ducks going to have this, this classic internal cap of no defenseman can make more than Cam Fowler? Because and how is that going to go over with Lindholm, right?
Well, and the fact that I guarantee
To
you,
me, Lindholm should be asking for more
well,
than Cam Fowler.
keep in mind, remember, and this maybe has been lost kind of in the conversation, but both Rickard Rakell and Hampus Lindholm held out. Like neither
Yeah.
of them signed a contract before the season just to get playing and wanted to take a cheaper deal for the Ducks. Rickard Rakell ended up taking a lower value deal than Hampus Lindholm did. But I don't know if you remember this, but Hampus Lindholm had a quote back then that said, "I'm not going to take less value than I'm worth. I need to set the table for all the people that come after me to get paid what they're worth."
Yeah. Yeah, and he got a pretty good deal. Like his current contract is pretty solid for, I mean, the AAV and the age where he's at, like a pre-UFA contract, that's a solid number.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would imagine he's probably going to take the same tact. I can't imagine he's super thrilled about how things have gone the last couple of years. And I could see it being a situation like with Raquel, with where you sit down with the agent and maybe things aren't looking so rosy
Yeah.
right now. And
And
so it's another opportunity, though, to get a ton of value because, again, with Lindholm, same with Raquel and Manson, you can legitimately get some solid
and
assets in return.
And here's the thing with moving Hampus Lindholm. Not only are you getting solid assets, but you need to have that conversation. I mean, I think previously I had said in the offseason, I think you need to start figuring out where their agent's at right now. Not necessarily that to sign an extension, but I think you can have preliminary conversations. Because
what's the like statute of, like what's the earliest that you can talk extension? Is it a year before?
You can have sign an extension a year before.
Okay.
So I guarantee
so they're coming up.
They're
coming up.
I think that they can probably send out feelers at this point to figure it out. But
well, they probably already have. Yeah.
And so my point is, if the feelers haven't come back well, you move him this deadline. You move him this deadline, and you do it to maximize your return. Because as the trade tier says, to get max value, you are getting maximum value moving Hampus Lindholm now because the team that you are trading him to gets 2 playoff runs out of him. And I come back to I come back.
Can I speak from a fan perspective right now?
Sure.
So everyone knows I don't root for the Ducks, like they're not my team, quote unquote. But I can see how fans of the team would be frustrated by what we're saying right now, because it is frustrating to think that just 5 years ago, everyone was excited about the fact that the Ducks had this next wave of young players that were going to lead the charge with Rakell, Lindholm, Manson, right? That there was this next wave that was going to supplement guys like Perry, Kessler, Getzlaf, and to essentially be at the point, 5 years after, 5-6 years after, where now you basically have to move on from them because you haven't found a way to successfully surround them. It's kind of depressing. Like, it sucks. Ideally, guys like Lindholm and Rakell would be cornerstones for this franchise moving forward. But because of the mismanagement on the margins, because of how Bob Murray has bungled the last 3 years, it makes this, unfortunately, something that you have to do. You have to move on from them.
Yeah. And
maybe you can speak to that. I don't know. How do you feel about that emotional component?
Real quick, something I wanted to say on this with the fact that on Hampus Lindholm specifically, with some people, I think on Rakell, some people said the same thing to me, that they would actually get more in the offseason for him, and I disagree with that. And the reason why I come back to this is I come back to the Kessler trade that was made. And Bob Murray actually came out and said that he was close to a deal at the deadline to get Ryan Kessler, and it would have been for the 2014 playoff run, so it would have been against the Kings. And that summer he ended up trading for Ryan Kessler. The Canucks backed out of that deal for whatever reason at the deadline. And basically Bob Murray has come out and said, he's like, they didn't get as much as I offered, a significantly lower package afterwards because I was not getting him for another playoff run.
Yeah.
I missed out on the time having him. And so a team will pay more now to get him for the playoff run. Also, before we keep moving forward, I want to say we now have in our Twitch chat and also calling us out on Twitter, the Bob Murray parody account.
Yes.
Saying, listening to at the Crash the Pond live on something called Twitch. And I can't believe the slander that is being said. Our roster construction over the past few years has been fine. The veteran leadership is what is keeping us back. and now we have him in our Twitch chat also. So thank you, Bob Murray, for joining us.
Thank you. We have to stress fake Bob Murray. We don't
Bob,
want to get him in trouble.
Bob Murray, fake GM, saying we are in our Twitch chat. We are still an exciting team. Fans need to be patient with our retool, and he's calling you out for using the word bungled.
I love the word bungled, bungalow.
And so getting back to this, Hampus Lindholm, they should be looking to move him, especially if I'm concerned over his next contract. I mean, you don't want two of those Cam Fowler deals on your cap hit, and so I think Hampus Lindholm is part of this tier.
Yeah, so that was a very long-winded way. Nothing on, whether you're in your feels at all about this trade deadline and moving on from guys like Rakell and Lindholm.
I mean, it's sad, but I mean,
you're just a cold calculating.
No, it's not that
automaton.
It's not that I'm cold. It's not
your spreadsheet.
Yeah, no, it's not that I'm cold and calculated.
Well, you're seeing it from this is what needs to be done.
Yes, I'm seeing it from the perspective of this is what needs to be done for this team to be better.
But there are people who probably listen to us who do watch the team because they root for the guys, they're fans of the team, and I think that we have to be somewhat recognizing of that.
I agree. And
have a heart. Have a heart, Jake.
Bonnie is one of those, and you went over major points with her right then and there.
That's what this is about. I'm really just playing the long game here.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that there's something there, but I think at the end of the day, as much as
at the end of the day, you don't give a shit. Just say it.
Yeah,
it's
no.
Okay.
At the end of the day, though, like I like the players on the Ducks team, no doubt. Like I've seen these guys come up, but I'm not a Rickard Rakell fan. I'm a Ducks fan. And so I want the Ducks to make moves that will eventually get the Ducks into contention again. Whether that has Rickard Rakell, whether that has Troy Terry, whether that has Sam Steele, whether that even has Trevor Zegras, doesn't necessarily matter to me that much. What matters to me is them making the necessary moves to push themselves into that conversation.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, ultimately, you're viewing this like this is for the betterment of the team.
Yeah.
So it's not like you want to see guys leave. It's because that's what's necessary to make the team better. Okay, a couple more tiers here. I'm going to try to restrain myself here, but this is the useful, it might be good to hang on to tier. Wait. Yanni Hakanpää and Nick Deloria's names are in here.
Can I adjust this tier, because I think you and I both don't think this is actually a tier for either of these players. Can I change this to guys that just should be moved, and whatever you can get in return, great?
Well, no, but do you think anyone fits that actual category?
No.
They're useful and might be good to hang on to?
No.
Well, yeah, because I feel like it's kind of this middle ground that doesn't totally exist in this conversation. So, yeah, I mean, Yanni Hakanpää, like, you should be looking to cash in on the season he's had.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
instead of re-sign him to potentially $2 to $3 million, as is written in this article, get the hell out. Because I actually, and I'm not saying that to Stevens, I'm saying get the hell out of the contract, get the hell out of the player, because I think he's played fine, but the way he's being talked about, especially by the Ducks, like, are they trying to boost his trade value? Is that what's going on? Because, yeah, he's been a good suppressor of scoring chances and shot quality, but that is almost exclusively what he does. Like, he doesn't give you any offense, whether it's from a team perspective, whether it's from an individual perspective. He also takes a lot of penalties. I think he's a player that you need to get out of.
He scored a really sweet own goal the other game that we'll get into.
He has multiple own goals this season.
This one was just another level, though. This was him legitimately shooting the puck into the goal, not just tipping off of him. Well, this was him trying to clear the puck and putting it in the net.
We're an hour into the podcast, so I don't know if we're going to do a recap of every single game.
We'll do it, but there you go, everyone. The recap of one of the games, I believe it was the 6-1 loss or 5-1 loss. Yanni Hakanpää scored a beautiful own goal in that game. But no, I think that, yeah, if you can cash in, I mean, here's the thing. I agree with you completely that they should try to be cashing in on Hakanpää. He's not really a roster player. He's not someone that's really necessary for this team moving forward. But let's just say for whatever reason they love Yanni Hakanpää. They want to keep him. All these different things. Move him at the deadline, get yourself draft capital, and sign him in the offseason.
Yeah,
I guarantee you Yanni Hakanpää has goodwill towards the Ducks for giving him this opportunity and this chance. Yeah. And if you moved him to a playoff team and give him the chance to play in the playoffs, I guarantee the player would be appreciative of that and would want to sign with you in the offseason. So, yeah. This isn't rocket science. Like, it's not that hard. Like, I go back to, I did a little bit of a deep dive on the Leafs rebuild the other day, and they did this with Daniel Winnick and
You mean yesterday?
I did it a couple days ago, but yesterday included. They flipped him for like a second round pick, one deadline, signed him again in the offseason, flipped him for another second round pick in the next deadline. Like
Yeah.
these things happen, and you can cash in. The Ducks should be looking to do the same thing with David Backes. They should, if you can get anything for Ben Hutton, do that. Like any guy that you can get anywhere from any sort of draft pick for, even if it's a 6th round pick, because here's one thing that's not being talked about that much. This year's draft is a crapshoot. Outside of the first round, maybe even the top of the first round, a lot of the guys will not have been scouted that much this year. Yep. They will not have a whole lot of scouting. Not a lot of these guys will have played. The draft is going to happen this year. It's all but confirmed that is happening in summer. So scouts are not going to be able to really get a whole lot of good looks at these players that are coming in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th rounds. So there's a chance that you could get a guy in the 4th, 5th round that would typically have been a 2nd rounder.
Yeah.
I
agree with that.
So if you can get a 4th or 5th round pick for Yanni Hakanpää, for David Backes, somebody would want, if you can retain half of David Backes' salary, there's got to be a team in the league that would like to have David Backes just on their roster for a playoff run.
He would be a worthy acquisition. Like if you have a defensive maybe lapse on your 4th line, he can come in and solve that.
You can get David Backes at $2.25 million for the end of the year.
Yeah. Now Nick Delorier's name is also here. I don't know why you'd hang on to him.
If you can move him, great. Here's the reason why you hang on to him. And this is the one reason and why you hold on to some guys. You do have to have guys that meet the expansion draft exposure requirement.
That is literally the only possible reason.
Yeah.
He provides you 0 on ice value. Like, I'm sorry. I think it's great that he fights. He sticks up for his teammate. He makes an honest living. But in terms of the hockey element, not there. Okay, let's just try to jam through these next few tiers here. There's a bunch more. Let's just go through names. Do you want to go through names?
Sure. Let's go through names. Sorry, so I'm looking right now at exposure requirements to see kind of who will be exposed to the Ducks. And it looks like already meeting the requirements are Jacob Larson, Nick Delorier, Adam Henrique, or Jacob Silverberg. So,
okay, here I'll throw some names at you, and then let's try to fly through some recaps and get to the questions.
Yep.
Are you ready for this?
Sure.
So Max Comtois.
Safe.
So you wouldn't move him?
No, I would not move him.
Yeah, I think he's shown enough. He's on a cheap deal, or he's on his ELC. His RFA number should not be too crazy, and if anything, it'll probably be worth it. Isaac Lindestrom.
Safe.
He's 21. Last year of his ELC. I don't think he's shown a ton, but he's not going to cost you much. So why not just find out maybe in the next couple of years? This was kind of a weird transition year for him. So maybe in the next 3 years, he takes that step forward.
Yep.
And that's fine. Max Jones.
Safe. I honestly, to make your life easier here.
Yeah.
All of these kids, Troy Terry, Max Jones, Sam Steele, Josh Maher, all these guys, keep them all unless they're for Sam Steele, the issue is he's just got no trade value right now. Yeah, and same thing with like a Jacob Larson. They all just don't have trade values, and Jacob Larson needs to be kept for expansion draft exposure requirements.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, the thing that I just don't get about this article is that with the fact that Terry is in the don't give up on them just yet unless you get proven talent. I mean, Terry is not at that point. Like, it's wild to me that that's how he's being discussed. Like that he has too many peaks and valleys in his game, that confidence seems to waver. Like, that is just too much narrative street. When he plays, he is an effective player. The empirical sources of information that we have shows that, just get all of this. Get all of this just hokey stuff out of the conversation. It is not material. If something happened behind the scenes, that I'm not aware of, then okay, maybe that changes things. But as far as what he does when he's on the ice, he is absolutely fine. The only reason that the Ducks are this harsh on him is because they have an undue expectation that he's going to be some point producer.
Yep.
They cannot they don't understand how to evaluate him, and that is a tragedy. But if they don't, someone else will.
Yep.
And also, Steven's saying that that the Ducks are not. And actually, I do want to say that this to clarify. So this is the line. Elliot Friedman reported he heard Terry might be looking for a change of scenery, but a source indicated that is not the case. So Elliot Friedman didn't specifically say that Terry is looking for a change of scenery. So if the source is saying that that is not the case, well, that was never really the case to begin with. So does that then confirm that this is from the team side? Like what exactly is that confirming or denying that line?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically saying that it's not from the player side.
It's not from him.
Yep.
If anything else, okay.
Yep.
And then with Steele, like I get what you're saying on him, but
here's the only reason why I would include those guys in a deal is if they're part of a bigger package. I think that that's a big caveat. I would move any of those kids if it's part, even Max Comtois, if it's part of a bigger package for a big piece. Yeah, but I wouldn't be doing those guys at a deadline in a hockey trade type of deal.
And also, to be honest, if I'm the Ducks, like I'm not even really thinking about those big kind of swing for a superstar deals.
I also think that these are the guys that you shouldn't necessarily be looking to move.
Well, that's the thing. And if you trade all these guys to get the superstar, you've then got no infrastructure for that star to come into. You're basically gutted everything just to get him, and that doesn't seem like a great scenario. Other names, I mean, you already talked about Larson, Heinen, Hutton, Rowney, Milano, Gooley. Like, it's just kind of sure. If you can, you can.
Yeah.
Carter Rowney's season is over.
Yep.
4 to 6 months is the timeline there. Yep. Knee injury.
Yep.
So that really sucks.
One thing that was brought up to me was a good friend, Benny, had mentioned that meniscus typically is 3 months. So he thought it was weird that the Ducks announced 4 to 6, but there's really no kind of, I think that it's maybe just the evaluation.
Medial meniscus. There was some other.
I think the other thing there's not really any. His initial read was potential, saying it's longer because of the season, but the season's over in like a month or two. So this, even if it was a 3-month recovery, the season would be over prior to that. So, his season's done. His Ducks career probably done.
I mean,
he's a UFA.
He'll definitely be able to find a contract somewhere else. And of those 3 guys in the fourth line. Like, he is by far the one that is, to me, at least some level of NHL player. Like, he can at least do something out there. The numbers bear that out. He's an okay defensive player, and he's just not awful pretty much in any other category. Whereas with Grant and Delorier, you just can't say that at all.
Yep. Agreed.
So sending best wishes to Carter Rowney.
Yes, definitely there.
Okay. Well, do you want to fly through these games?
Sure.
Because there are quite a few to talk about.
Let's go for it. We had 2 different series from the past week. So if you want to kind of just blitz through the series.
San Jose.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, so we did a watch along this week, and this was a fun one. I gotta say, this was our most exciting watch along that we've done so far. The Ducks winning a big one against the rival LA Kings, 6-5 in overtime. To me, the highlight of the night, I mean, it is the highlight of the night, is Trevor Zegras setting up Henrique for that OT winner after once again being benched for absolutely no reason. So this was a fun game, and look, Rickard Rakell picking up 2 goals, just an exciting one. Even though, like, I don't think the Ducks necessarily played that well. I don't think either team really played that well. It was a fun game to watch.
Yeah, it was 100% a fun game to watch. I mean, this was not the coming out party for Rickard Rakell because he had a bunch of good games before this in terms of point production, but this was the game where he had 2 goals and an assist. One of the goals being that ridiculous backhand shelf goal that he put in, and so it was a really fun game to watch. It was a back and forth game, one that, I mean, the main issue with this game, and this is going to be kind of a bit of the main issue for the Ducks in the past week. Penalties. The LA Kings are not a good team at 5-on-5. And now, granted, in this game, they had the better of 5-on-5 play against the Ducks. But the issue, the reason why the Kings are in the position that they are is a little bit of unsustainable play. I think there's definitely a part of that, a little bit of PDO going their way. But
I thought it was because the veterans are playing so well and everybody's bought in.
Don't buy into that narrative, people. They are bad. They're a bad team.
I just wanted to get your reaction there.
the Kings are a bad team. This is actually a very good thing for the Ducks in the long run because they're not making the playoffs. They're bad. They're just not going to have as good of a pick this year.
Yeah, I know.
But
This is actually not that great for the Kings. Although to be fair, they've amassed so many prospects, it's not quite as
yeah,
bad,
no.
but yeah.
But it doesn't help them in this aspect. But the Kings, basically what's propping them up right now is a very, very killer power play, which is unsustainably hot right now, but it is hot. And as hockey goes, hockey is a streaky game. If you get hot and you start scoring goals, you can outshoot some of where the regression should be, and then eventually you'll come back down to earth with a cold streak. So the Kings are right now in that hot streak, and the Ducks took a lot of penalties in this game. I'm trying to right now look, but the Ducks took 4 penalties over the course of this game, and they were punished a little bit by the Kings. The Kings had 2 power play goals. Now, granted, the Ducks were able to get one back with Jakob Silfverberg's shorthanded goal in this game, but I mean, the Kings, like I said, 2 power play goals out, 2 for 4 in this game. The Ducks were flirting dangerously with that in this game, and that would become a theme throughout the rest of the week for this Ducks team. I mean, they obviously got away with it, got the overtime win, and that was 2 wins in a row actually for the Ducks. Now, granted, both of them were in overtime. Funny enough that playing a high skilled player in overtime ends up resulting in a very nice chance of
Yeah.
a goal happening.
I do want to talk about that Zegras assist just for a second. I mean,
go for it.
the way that he set up Doughty on that play, holding that puck in the loaded position, in a shooting position, so that the defender has to respect the shot threat and the pass threat, and just sling it back just a little bit to open up the lane and then slip it through. I think it was underneath Doughty's stick and over to Henrique. Just really an insanely high level play, high hockey IQ, high skill to execute it. It just kind of shows what Trevor Zegras can do with time and space. And again, like, he's not always going to be on a 2-on-1 in a 3-on-3 overtime, but I just think you got to give this guy as many opportunities as you can to have cracks at it, because he can make something out of nothing. And that's kind of what we saw in that play. Of course, he did have a lot of space, but just something for Ducks fans, I think, to really hang their hat on.
It took, which is crazy that it took Dallas Eakins 3 or 4. It was at the 2-minute mark when the goal was scored. I've actually kind of gone away from the page, but I can look that up really quickly. But basically, it took him that long to get Trevor Zegras onto the ice in 3-on-3 overtime. I mean,
he had not touched the ice yet.
The goal was scored at 3 minutes. So basically, I think that he got on the ice when there had been at least 2 or 3 line changes prior to him coming out on the ice. And it took that long for that to happen. And it's just, I mean, it's the exact thing that we've been talking about with the complete kind of mismanagement of this Ducks roster throughout the course of the season. It's little things like that where, I mean, this has been the prevailing theme since Trevor Zegras has come up, is that Dallas Eakins has treated him with kid gloves. And
and there's just really no need for it to this degree.
No, he's good enough to play in the NHL, and he should be treated as such. Stop doing this and stop hurting your team as a result of it. Play your players. Stop
that's
overthinking
the funny thing,
it.
Is that this is a team that's starved for offense, and that's what Trevor Zegras gives you in spades. Next game, the Ducks would lose 5-1 to the Kings, and this would kind of start a really bad stretch where they lost 2 really ugly games, 2 what I kind of thought were just lifeless games. I know that the Ducks had some okay moments at 5-on-5, but the only goal they got that night was from Sam Steele. And, once again, I mean, you would see just the parade to the penalty box for the Ducks really hurting them in different stretches. And I don't know, just kind of one of those games. I mean, honestly, that kind of just makes you ask some questions about where this team is at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does. And I think the other notable takeaway from this game, I mean, first off, once again, penalties, big issue for this Ducks team in this game on the whole. I mean, they took a bunch of penalties and they got punished once again by the Kings for it.
They were also playing, the Kings had to start Troy Grosnick, who is a career AHL goaltender, and they could only get one by him, and they just never really, never
The
really threatened. I mean, to like you would think that they would really do everything they possibly can to get shots on net, and it just never really materialized.
Yeah, and in this game, so this was the game where the Kings scored 2 power play goals in the first and second period to take a 2-0 lead, and the Ducks got back to within 2-1, but never got close. And so, I mean, taking those penalties put them behind the 8 ball, and so
Yep.
they ended up spotting the Kings a 2-0 lead because of the penalty situation, and it's a bad thing to happen for this Ducks team. And the other thing, kind of note in this game, first off, Yanni Hakama with just a beauty of an own goal in this game on the the
Well,
Alex
also
Iafallo goal. But
Terry scratched.
Terry was hurt. Terry was hurt in this
Oh,
game.
that's right. He's hurt. Sorry.
Yeah. He was hurt in this game, and was what they ended up doing was they ended up bringing in Vinny Lettieri, noted NHLer. When you have Danton Heinen on your roster being scratched, you have David Backes on your roster being scratched or left on the taxi squad, and you bring in Vinny Lettieri, and not only do you do that, you put him on the first power play unit with Trevor Zegras.
Well, you know why, Jake. Come on.
Oh, why?
Come on. You don't know why?
Enlighten me here. Enlighten me to what you've heard about why Vinny Lettieri is on the first power play unit.
Based on what I've heard from, former NHLer Brian Hayward and current color commentator Brian Hayward, it's because of his one-timer ability, which is something that the Ducks have lacked. Now, I'm sure that Brian Hayward got that from Dallas Eakins, because the commentators get to talk to the coaches at every opportunity. So I don't think he's drawing that out of thin air. So that is the thought process behind Vinny Lettieri, career AHLer, being on the power play for the Anaheim Ducks at times instead of much, much better players. Like this is actual insanity.
Yeah.
This is batshit crazy.
Yeah. It is absolutely insane.
What the hell?
The fact that, and so he's out there with Adam Henrique, Kevin Shattenkirk, Jakob Silfverberg, and Trevor Zegras. Like, first off, how I felt so awful in it was both, and I mean we'll get into the Sharks game. We need
to make a meme. You know how we did big booming shot for Curran?
Yeah.
We need like elite 1T for Lettieri. 1T Lettieri.
1T Lettieri.
Something like that. Like we need to get that going.
1T Vinny.
1T Vinny. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like whenever Zegras had the puck, I believe it happened in both the Kings and the Sharks game that, I mean, basically what the penalty kill did was they kind of had 3 guys swarm him. And the issue is that nobody moved away from the puck. Basically, Trevor Zegras is sitting there stick handling, looking for someone to pass the puck to, someone to open up a passing lane. Nobody's moving.
Very static.
Trevor Zegras is a great playmaker, but you need to have guys that are NHL quality moving away. And I mean, this is also a shot at Jakob Silfverberg and Adam Henrique on that power play, not moving well enough to open up lanes. Now, granted, Adam Henrique is the net front presence. Jakob Silfverberg is in the bumper position.
This is all just a big indictment of the coaching staff.
Yeah, like there needs to be a better alignment of the power play. I mean, it would be absolutely fantastic for Rickard Rakell to be there and or Ryan Getzlaf. Have Ryan Getzlaf on the other half wall, and him and Zegras can kind of move it back and forth, opening up lanes for different people. So it's crazy to me.
I don't think that moving away from the puck is as important, but it's something you'd like to see some degree of. And I mean, this just all goes back to the fact that the Ducks have not had true direction on the power play in, I will say, since 2017. Mark Morrison has been a disaster as an assistant coach. I think that that's completely fair to say. I think Bob Murray agrees with me on that. I mean, if you read Bob Murray's comments about how the season has gone, he's basically said everything but Mark Morrison's name in these comments about how bad the power play has been. And so I would expect there to be a change there going to next season, which is a positive, even if the Ducks do hang on to Eakins and Murray. So yeah, and then of course the Ducks would lose the following game, and this was the one where it felt like the wheels just fell off the wagon. I mean, they lose 6-0 to the San Jose Sharks, a Sharks team who the Ducks have beaten this season. It's not as if this is a team that's so far ahead of them. And really where things just kind of came unhinged was the third period. The Ducks were actually playing an okay 5-on-5 game through 40 minutes, and then just went to complete hell in the third, giving up 4 goals. And I mean, you would see John Gibson, and just extreme frustration, gets pulled from the game. And, after the game, Eakins, even someone insinuating that, Gibson's got to be careful how he reacts. Just just one of those games where it felt like all of the worst things about this team just coming to light. I mean, anyway, what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it was a bad game. No doubt about it. I mean, the Ducks really lacked
Real bad.
the Ducks really lacked getting some necessary quality against an awful goalie in Devin Dubnyk. Like, there's no other way around it. Devin Dubnyk is a bad goalie in the NHL. The Minnesota Wild are thriving because he's gone.
Yep.
And that's not the only reason, but it's one of the reasons they're getting actual
Oh.
NHL quality
Mhm.
goaltending.
Yep.
And so, I mean, the broadcast crew would have had you think that Devin Dubnyk is this massive goalie and that's what's making him thrive. It's like, no, the Duck shot quality was poor.
Yep. Yep. No, it's because he's big. And then moving on into last night's game, I mean, the Ducks would lose 3-1. They scratched Trevor Zegras because that's what you got to do.
Because the kid gloves have to be on these hands, and
Well, because
he can't play back to back.
At 19 years of age, when at least when I was 19, I would never get tired, would not get hangovers. You probably do get tired of playing back to backs. It is probably harder. You got to wait a couple of years to play back to back. So anyway,
It's not as if he hasn't played back to backs already in the AHL.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what is this insanity? And Vinny Lettieri still in the lineup. Like, that is the crazy thing.
Still on the first power play unit.
Elite 1T big booming clapper Vinny Lettieri, who I'm being told rang one off the bar in the first game. So good for him. Got to keep him in there because Trevor Zegras might get a little tired. By playing back-to-back games, and we don't want to hurt and compromise his development by having him be tired. That would not be good for him.
Yeah, it's just it's just poor decision making on like the Ducks roster is already not that, like, it's not good enough to make the playoffs, and the coaching staff is doing them no favors by setting up the roster the way they have, treating Trevor Zegras like he's never played a hockey game before in his life, because in reality that's what they're doing. They're playing Trevor Zegras. I mean, the Ducks basically, Trevor Zegras is good enough. All you have to do is let him play. And you and I agree that he should be on the Ducks. Like, no doubt that he is good enough to be in the NHL. He's
good enough in part because he's kind of too good for the AHL.
Yeah.
So where else are you going to play him?
This is where he should be. But doing this with him does him no favors. Like, if you're going to be doing this to him for the rest of the year, like, just send him down. Like, I mean, here's one reason why you could send him down. One thing I realized this week. Yes, the ELC is burned. I've long said that actually doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah.
One thing that is of note is that years of service do come into play somewhat here. If he plays, I think typically it's 40 games out of 82, and so that's probably prorated down to whatever out of 56. Then this season counts as a year of service and counts as 1 year towards unrestricted free agency, and counts as year 1 of 7. So basically, if he doesn't, then this does not count as a year. Although the one thing I haven't done the deep dive on is it's 7 years of service or 27 years old. So I'm not sure if this year actually makes that big of a difference. I think it might, though. But regardless, the point in all of this is there could be a reason why they send him down, even though they've burned the year. I think that he should stay in the NHL. He's too good for the AHL. But if you're gonna treat him like this and do this to him, then just send him down. I mean, he should, like, the Ducks aren't making the playoffs. Like, this isn't a bold statement by me. This isn't something me going out of my way here. The Ducks are 5th worst in the league by points percentage. They are by far the worst team in the Pacific, or in the West Division. I mean, they are currently 3 points behind the Sharks, and the Sharks have 4 games in hand.
Yeah.
Like,
well, another thing I didn't want to bring up about last night is that Troy Terry did get back into the lineup, and Danton Heinen also got back into the lineup, which is kind of just makes it even crazier that they scratched Zegras, because, or not crazier, but unfortunate, because you get these guys in who should be playing, but then it has to come at the cost of Trevor Zegras because Danton Heinen, or because Vinny Lettieri can't come out of the lineup, or it's just that kind of logic. Nick Delorier can't come out of the lineup. But gotta say, Jake, Troy Terry last night, 2 giveaways. Can't have that.
Yeah.
Led the team in giveaways.
Completely ignoring the fact that when he was on the ice, the Ducks actually looked dangerous throughout the entirety of the game.
I guarantee you the Ducks front office only looks at the game sheet that's from NHL.com.
Probably. And guess who led the Ducks in expected goals for percentage last night?
Oh, Troy Terry.
Yep. Troy Terry,
Yep,
0.654, 0.46 against.
that's what he does.
Like only one of two Ducks. Actually, guess who's the only other Duck above 50%? Granted, varies very slightly at 50.51.
Only other Duck, Danton Heinen.
Yep. The two
Yep.
guys, like
Well, and this is something we've talked about in the past, but I also don't really understand the rush to get rid of Danton Heinen. Like, he's a fine player, kind of fits the age range. Like, another weird thing. But okay, let's any final thoughts on that game, because we are now an hour and a half in, and we should probably be looking to
get
slowly wrap up here.
get to we should get to some
Get to
Twitch,
some questions. Yeah,
questions. So
we need to get some questions.
yeah, so people in the Twitch chat start throwing them in. But no, I don't really think anything else of note. David Backus drew back in. The only other thing is he was put on waivers yesterday. Most likely he will clear waivers completely. Nobody wants that contract on the whole. Someone would probably take it in terms of 50% retained. But the reason why that happened is last night was his 10th game. As a result of that, he needs waivers again to be good to go back to the taxi squad.
I just want to say the best part of the stream is your cat Salem in your background. She's just living her best life back there.
Oh,
Look in her paws.
you missed it earlier in the show. I didn't mention it, but there was at one point where, so she's been sleeping this whole time. She legitimately like stretched out, and she did the thing where her arms were straight up in the air and her head was curled back, and you could see her arms up in the air like she was want to ask a question as she was taking a nap.
Oh, I saw her curl up into a ball too, which was great. She's the best.
Yep, she's going for a yawn right now. She's just waking up from her nap.
She brings the stability to the show.
Yeah,
She's the glue.
yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. So let's try to get in some questions if there are any.
So if you're listening to this on YouTube, yes, we're on YouTube, youtube.com/crashthepond, or on your favorite podcast services. We do a live stream on the show each and every time, every Sunday at 8 p.m. You can find us at twitch.tv/crashthepond, where you can watch us live and help support the show. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch Prime sub each and every month. You do have to hit that subscribe button after 30 days to resub to the channel, and want to give a shout out to a couple of people that have done that. And also, if you have Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch Prime gaming sub each and every month. So Science Cat 108, who is our good friend Jess from our beer league team, resubbed for 6 months. Sean Salisbury subbed. Bionic Chris gifted a sub to Gabe Greenlee. Science Cat 108 gifted a sub to Dan's the Man. And I believe that is it for subs. Apologies. That is what I'm seeing, if there was one that potentially got missed. So let's get to this question. Let's start with this one, because Sean D. Salisbury actually did a highlighted message as a result of him subbing. Said, why do you all think, or who do you all think is a fit for head coach and general manager? So assuming the Ducks end up firing Bob Murray and Dallas Eakins at the end of the year, who do you think would be a fit?
Well, first off, just want to say that's not a safe assumption, but sorry. Whoa. I do think Mike Gillis would be a guy that I would really try to target. We've brought his name up in the past quite a bit. I think he's a guy who was ahead of his time during the Vancouver run. I think he's been out of the game for a while now, but I think that just based off the interviews I've heard with him, he kind of has that forward-thinking mindset that I think the Ducks could really benefit from. I don't know how heavily he is into analytics, but it sounds like he's more open to it, and that is just the kind of GM the Ducks need.
I think
and for head coach, who do you have?
So real quick on the GM, I agree completely. I actually would really like to see him in a president of hockey ops role, and Lawrence Gilman, who was his right-hand man in Vancouver, be given the GM role. And I think those two worked really well together.
Yeah.
I think that Gillis, maybe from his experience, I think would be really good in a president of hockey ops role. So
yeah, and another name that I know is kind of more out of the box, but I mean, I would love to see the Ducks make an out of the box hire. I mean, Tyler Dello's been in the NHL for quite a bit of time now. Just when he was out in the public sphere, I always really loved hearing his thoughts, because I think he's got a good skeptical mind.
Yep.
And he's sounds like he's rising up in prominence in New Jersey. And I do think that he might be at that point where give him the wheel and see what he can do.
And I think maybe having a president of hockey ops like a Gillis above him would be a good idea.
Yeah, like a Dello-Gillis tandem would be pretty amazing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And as for coach, I mean, I think the two obvious options are Bruce Boudreau and Gerard Gallant. I think Boudreau would be an awesome fit. He knows the area, knows the team, knows
Can
the
you imagine that?
I mean,
if they brought back Boudreau?
I'm not a big person for retreads, mainly because of because of the,
But Boudreaux isn't your classic
no,
retread
he's
because
not.
he's actually good. Like
Well,
he
and
deserves to be a retread if that makes sense.
the other thing is that this would be done without Murray. And I think that's a key
Yeah.
aspect of this.
Well, they
And
didn't get
so
along, which is something
exactly.
we know.
That would
Yeah.
be why it would have to be if Murray is gone. That's the only way Bruce would come back. And then Gerard Gallant's also a no-brainer. I would personally stay away from Mike Babcock at this point in
Claude
time.
Julien is a name that's out there.
I don't know if he would be a great fit for this team, but he would improve the
Well,
team.
I don't think Boudreaux is a great fit either. I mean, the thing is, although I think Boudreaux is a great coach, like the Ducks are going to be in a rebuild for a while. And, Boudreaux, Julien, these are some older guys. And do they want to be part of a rebuild? I don't know if that's necessarily in the cards for them. So we'll see. I don't have really a Rolodex of candidates for head coach, but I would look to go younger, look to go forward thinking, maybe go back to the AHL well again and see what you can find there. Like dig up the next Sheldon Keefe, see if you can
Yeah.
do that.
So NJ Devils fan 68 asks us, what are your thoughts on the goals losing players to call-ups and also having to go back to juniors, while teams like Bakersfield get to add players like Raphael Lavoie, Philip Broberg, different things
Yeah,
like that.
I mean them's the breaks of the AHL
Yep.
of minor league hockey. Like
Yep.
that's just kind of the nature of it, unfortunately.
Yep. 100%. I mean, that's how it goes, especially when you have these high-end talents. And
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
this is a weird year for that too.
yes, 100% exactly. And Mr. Arrow 91 said, how much longer does Murray get to hold this team down?
I think he gets through the end of his contract. Like I actually don't think the Samuelis will fire him as much as I think that that's what they should do. He has, I believe, one more year left in his contract. Am I wrong on that? It's 2022, right? It's
Yeah,
it's the
yeah,
year
yeah, yeah,
after the
yeah, yeah,
expansion draft.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He has one more year.
So I think he gets to the end, and then I don't know. I mean, are the Samuelis going to extend him? Like, is that in the cards?
Not if they're bad still.
Like that's the thing. If the Ducks are bad next season, I just I think he even though this is completely outside of how I view it, I think in the minds of the Samuelis, it's a COVID year, it's a weird season. There's no fans anyway. I almost feel like they're writing this one off to begin with. So if the Ducks are not back to some form of relevancy next year, then I think they just don't extend him and go a different direction. So I think next year is the one. And I know that people probably hate hearing that, but that's kind of like my most realistic read on the situation.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to this question. Tristan missed. So now that we've talked about Murray, do you think Aikens will be fired after this season?
Um, Look, Bob Murray gave Dallas Aikens the vote of confidence. Now, how much is that really worth? We do know that the Ducks were looking to make tweaks to their coaching staff before the season started. Um, I think if they could have found a way to get Daryl Sutter behind the bench, I think they would have as an assistant. But I still like it's the same thing as with Bob Murray. Like I think Aikens has another year left on his contract, and they're probably just going to ride it out. Like that's like again, we got to somewhat consider the financial component of this. The Samuelis probably don't want to pay people not to work for them when their bottom line is hurting to begin with. So I don't think anyone's getting fired, guys. I'm really sorry to say it, but I think that's how it's trending. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. I would be happy to prove wrong, not because I want people to lose their jobs, but because I think that that's what this team needs is for a change in leadership. So we will see, but I'm not expecting it to happen.
All right, so let's hit.
Maybe do you have a different opinion than me on that?
No, I don't. I think
Okay.
that I'd like to see him fired. I don't really expect it, honestly.
Okay.
If he does get fired, it's not going to be until the end of the year. I think there's also the COVID protocol issue that's coming into play. So
Yeah.
if they decide to move on, it's not going to happen until after the season, at the earliest. I think that you're kind of spot on with some things there, though. So let me ask, let's hit three more questions from the Twitch chat. So Steven NHL said, why didn't the Ducks rebuild after they got swept in the playoffs by the Sharks?
Because I think that they still viewed themselves as a competitive team. They had brought in guys to make them to remain competitive. They had had a great season from John Gibson.
They had a 100+ point year before that.
They had a good season from Ryan Getzlaf that year. So I think that they still believe that they could get back in. Was it a crazy thought? I don't know. I mean, it was starting to trend in the wrong direction because despite their regular season success, the underlying metrics were really starting to take a nosedive. And
Right.
whereas in 16-17, the Ducks were, I think, legitimately good, they were definitely were not to that same degree the following year.
Yeah. So M Young asks, after icing the same defense for the past like 8 games or so, that's letting a certain amount of goals, would you think of finally giving big booming shot a chance? Cough, please no more Larson.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So Jacob Larson and Ben Hutton have both been generally awful this season, and it does kind of beg the question. The Ducks gave Cody Curran a contract, and not like a frivolous deal. Like they gave him $1 million, and like, don't you want to maybe find out if he can play? And sorry, he's got 2 years. So yeah, at some point, why not? Why the hell not? It's kind of baffling to me that he hasn't gotten a chance yet, to be honest with you.
Yeah. NKD Nwin 9089 says, have you guys played hockey before? Yes. Felix and I actually are on a beer league team together. We've done the Pod Classic, so yes, we play low level beer league.
Yeah,
Um,
if you can't see in my background, I've got a couple twigs and some pucks back there.
yeah.
But yeah, I was a goalie growing up, so I don't know what I'm talking about.
Couple more actual quick ones. If there is if Rickard Rakell is part of a package for Jack Eichel, what more do you think it would take from Hardcore Luchador? And would you do it
Oh,
in that
oh.
package?
Well, they would probably ask for Comtois. They would probably ask for a pick. They would probably ask for Zegras,
Yep.
I would imagine. And that's where I think it's just not worth it anymore because you're basically having to strip it all the way down to the point where, yeah, you get like, I'm a bit conflicted on this, to be honest, because on one hand, Jack Eichel is amazingly good. He's 24. He's locked into his deal. And maybe it is worth just bringing him into a skeleton crew and building around him. But I think that that is just a tougher proposition. So I don't know 100% where I land on that, to be honest with you.
Fair enough. So ODog81 says Gibson looks mad lately. Do you see him potentially requesting a trade?
I don't know. I mean, I think that, yeah, he's been looking pissed all season. This team isn't going anywhere. I don't think that, like, I don't know if, I don't think they'll be pushing for a playoff spot next year either. Uh, I would imagine John Gibson wants to win some games. So I don't think it's impossible. No, I don't think it's crazy.
Yeah, and this one's specifically for me, and then we'll end with one kind of question we got from Twitter that I think is a fun way to wrap this up. NJ Devils fan said, wrestling question. You could put two people in a barbed wire exploding death match, which was on AEW Revolution last week. Who would you put into this match? Wow, that's actually a tough question for me because I'm trying to really think. I think Moxley would have to be in it. I mean, he's just kind of really built for that type of match, and he showed why. I really think Moxley versus Kingston in that match would be just a banger. I mean, that would be so much fun to watch. Both those guys know how to pull out the best of each other. They've had some great matches. They've gone to that well already, but I think that eventually, if that's the big blow off, I think Moxley versus Kingston would be absolutely amazing in that match. So let's go with that. You have no opinions. I know that. On
Nope.
that, right?
Nope.
So let's end with this. So even Wilder Wing asks this question for tonight's pod. Did you guys start the podcast because the team's future looked bright at the time? How has your perspective on the pod been affected by this drought? And said, P.S. Thanks for sticking with it. Also want to say, got a couple nice messages from people out there when I had a little bit of a rant and said, I've never felt so hopeless as a Ducks fan, let
I've
alone
never felt so alone, so cold.
let alone one that does a podcast and covers this team. And I had a lot
Yeah.
of people kind of reach out saying like, we really like are thankful that you kind of do the show, and I can't imagine. So wanted to say thank you. Honestly, the reason why I keep pushing through, why you and I have started a blog, gone on our own and started our own blog throughout all
We
this.
have t-shirts.
We have t-shirts also, is that I think we do it because of everyone that listens. And I think in our own little way, it makes an impact for everyone else and provides entertainment. And I think that
Yeah.
the feedback we get from everyone is what makes me want to keep going.
Yeah. I mean, we're just at the point where we can't walk away. Like it's, we would be walking away from something that brings us joy. So, I mean, I do think that, so to answer the question though, I don't know if you actually answered it there or
No, I
not.
didn't.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I figured. Yeah, I mean, we started it just kind of haphazardly. Like I just hit up Jake and was like, "Hey, you want to do a pod?" Like for one game. It was a
Yeah.
one game call up.
We
You got
we had
called.
we had never talked before that
We had
show.
never spoken. Like we had barely spoken, and I was just a writer at Anaheim Calling, looking to start an Anaheim Calling. Well, we had an Anaheim Calling podcast that JC and I did, but it was like more of a. It was like maybe a couple. Like how often was it? Like a couple times a month, maybe. It wasn't that often.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't remember.
I
But
don't
then I
I
hit up
listened.
Jake.
I don't remember.
I hit
But
up
yeah.
Jake and I was like, "Do you want to do a pod?" I was trying to get it going every game, and Jake was like, "Yes." And one game turned into two, turned into three, turned into, however many we're at. Maybe we'll hit 1,000 games. Maybe we'll get.
I
Maybe
have
we'll have a
no
silver stick
I'm
night.
curious how many episodes we're at now, but I it would take a long time
Yeah.
to figure
So
that out
we
because we don't
started
have
it.
them all up anymore.
We started it just because I wanted to do a podcast, and then Jake came along for the ride, and I mean, Jake basically took it over after that. Um, And how has our perspective on the pod been affected? I mean, I'm not going to lie. There have been some Sundays where I've been like, I don't know what the hell we're going to talk about this week. Like, this team is just bumming me out. But at the end of the day, I always get sucked back in because
And
there's always something. There's always something to talk about.
yeah, I think there's always something to talk about, no doubt. I think last year it was tougher at times doing a post game type show after every single game, where a lot of times the narrative for every game is exactly the same. And so breaking it down doesn't necessarily change. And so
I'm
it feels a
I'm
bit
I'm glad
repetitive.
we got off of that format.
Yeah,
Not because I didn't like doing it, but it did feel like,
it felt
you know,
repetitive. It got repetitive.
yeah,
It got very,
yeah.
very repetitive. I think that format, the first season we did this, obviously
It,
that was the 17-18 year. So that was the year the Ducks had a
it was
100
a
plus
good
point year.
it
And
was a good launching pad for us, especially that year because the team was still interesting game to game. Like it felt like the games mattered. And so I think that's when that format works. But when you have a team like this, I mean, I know that there are other podcasts that do game by game. My hat comes off to them, but personally, I like my Sunday nights.
And I think it's not giving too much behind the scenes things. It's allowed us to kind of boost up things like our Patreon that I think allow
Yeah,
us to go different avenues that aren't necessarily down the same rabbit hole. I think it opens us up not to do too much of a plug or anything like that, but it allows us to potentially do post game Warzone streams like we did after. No, but like
that's where
legitimately.
you were going with that. I
Yeah.
had no clue where you were going with that.
We legitimately couldn't have done that if we were still doing the post game
No,
podcast, and
and
so and a lot of
and
people enjoyed
yeah,
that, and that was a nice way for us to blow off steam and have some fun. And
and
boy, did we have some fun!
I'm not gonna lie. Like doing the every games, it did feel like a chore by the end. Like I got worn down by it because it just felt like my life was basically tied to the Ducks schedule. And like, unless you're a beat writer who's making a salary doing that, it's kind of harder mentally to get through
Yeah,
that. So I
yeah.
think now what we do is way more sustainable. We give you streams where I curse very loudly every time I die on Warzone, which by the way was a blast. And thank you to everybody who tuned in. So it's all for the better.
We
We just basically talked about ourselves for 10 minutes there, but it's fine.
Hey, I mean,
It's fine.
people tune in to hear us talk about the Ducks. People also tune in to just hear us talk. I mean, we had a fair amount of
See,
people watch us play Warzone, so
see, people want my POV in the stream next time. So Jake, get on it.
I do not know. Okay, buy me someone buy me another monitor, please.
Maybe
Uh,
I mean, my monitor is probably bigger than yours, so maybe I could
I
figure
have
it out.
two. You only have one.
Yeah, but mine is large. Mine is V large.
Shaming,
Mine is
wealth
thick.
shaming,
Thick.
shaming.
You do that to me all the time.
All
You
right,
shame me
I
regularly.
think it's about time that we wrap this thing up. Science Cat, who's our good friend Jess from our beer league team, says this is because you guys are awesome. So thank you so much.
I don't think anyone wants my POV anyway, because it's just someone like just an idiot jumping around, not knowing where to go. Actually, I think
Oh,
people would enjoy my drops because I am so bad at like landing and timing it and cutting the
yeah.
shoot.
So I can't get your POV because I have no idea how to do that. I can maybe add your camera.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was legit having the time of my life that night.
Yeah,
Like,
and
it was fun.
Hardcore Lucha is asking when is the next Crash the Pond meetup now that the world is opening. We'll probably have to do that again. Actually, really cool news. We surpassed 100 patrons in the last little bit. So
Oh,
that was kind of a goal that we had for a while, and we have now surpassed that. So
thank
one
you.
of the things that I wanted to do was way back when we did a watch party at Legends in Long Beach for patrons. And so not going to
Yeah,
say where we do it or what game we do it
maybe we'll
for.
do like an outdoor
Yeah,
watch or
and so
something.
we'll see when thing it probably won't be this year, but as we get into next year, we'll probably try to do something similar to that.
Yeah. Yeah, probably let's wait till everybody's vaccinated.
Yeah,
Let's just like can we just meet.
probably next season.
Yeah. Yeah, once that threshold is met, I think we'll be. There's just so much work that goes into organizing events. Like people are having weddings right now. Like Jake, I know you had a wedding in non-COVID times and that looked like a boatload of work. I can't imagine having to do it now, like with all of those considerations in play. So, I'm sure you're really excited to talk about this topic. Let's just get out of here. Let's just get the hell out of here. You guys have heard us talk enough. So before we get out, though, I do want to say there are a few ways that you can support our show, which definitely go a long way. The biggest one that Jake alluded to is our Patreon page. I do think that that's one way where you get value out of it and it helps us keep this thing going. That's at patreon.com/crash the pond. You have 3 tiers to support us. So for $1 a month, you get to join our patrons only Discord chat, which I got to say is just awesome. That is where we've got people that are just there really to talk about hockey, to have fun conversations, super wholesome. We have a general chat as well where we get into today. We were talking about Jake's, fitness journey. So there's definitely some interesting stuff in there, but also during the actual Ducks games, people are going back and forth in there. It is popping off. When there's Ducks breaking news, we get in there as well. That's for $1 a month, and you get to connect with other diehard fans. Now, for $5 a month, you get access to that, as well as 2 bonus episodes. And on those episodes, we are a bit more unfiltered. It's just a different kind of atmosphere, more relaxed. We're not having to go through all the different news items of the week. So the last one we did was yesterday morning. Jake and I went in depth on just kind of the latest goings-ons with the Ducks and just kind of trying to figure it all out, basically. And it was very detailed. And so that's for $5 a month. We also just do like league-wide rankings on that. We'll also talk about The Mandalorian or WandaVision at some point, maybe. We'll see. And so that's for $5 a month. For
Yes, we are
$15 a
doing
month,
that at some point.
a month, you get access to the episodes, you get access to the chat, but this is a really new, exciting feature. You also get access to 2 watch-alongs a month. So what that means is we actually do a broadcast of Ducks games. So instead of having to maybe listen to some commentators that you're tired of listening of, or you just want to change, you can actually turn on our broadcast and hear our commentary throughout the game. You get a lot more stats, a lot more analysis, and just you get kind of us. You get our banter, and that's for $15 a month. And we post as early in the month as possible when those dates will be. We actually have a watch along coming up this week on the Ducks breakout night as they wear their reverse retros for the first time. So
Very excited about that.
that should be a blast. Jake was so excited he actually made that an item in our script that we just never got to.
Yeah,
So, but we
I
will.
figured we'd get to it during the plugs.
Well, I am excited to see you excited. That's really what this comes down to.
I'll be wearing my jersey.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great jersey, and I am excited. I'm just curious to see what the equipment will look like. But anyway, so if you don't, if catch a little tight right now, that's totally understandable. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. Just search Crash the Pond. Leave us a rating and a review there. Those go a very long way. And when we do get new reviews, we will read them on the show. If you're not on Apple Podcasts, check us out on Spotify. Like Jake said earlier, we are on YouTube, youtube.com/crash the pond. Make sure that you subscribe there and turn on your notifications to see when our show goes up. Now, a couple different things here as well. Make sure to check out our website, crashthepond.com. We've got articles going up there. I got my takeaways going up tomorrow about the past San Jose series. We have 5 takeaways after each Duck series this season where we just kind of give you different stats, different highlights of that particular series. There's also a shop there, crashthepond.com/shop. I'm actually wearing one of the t-shirts here. As you can see, I've got the eggplant and jade, which works perfectly for the reverse retro night. T-shirts there, hoodies. Make sure to go check it out. We've also got a fun collab, I think, coming up I don't know how finalized that is.
Nothing finalized yet. I mean, we can throw it out there. Hit us up if you're listening to this on Twitter or something like that. If you want to
Yep.
see this, we're trying to gauge some interest, but we're currently talking with Bring Hockey back at potentially doing a collaboration with them, but want to see if where the interest level is at. So if you're listening
Yep.
to this and you're on Twitter, reach out to us on Twitter. Email me at jake@crashthepond.com. If you're interested, just trying to gauge the interest round, and we might do a shirt or a hat or something along those lines with them.
Yep. And outside of that, Jake, I'm gonna plug the social media here in a second. Am I forget anything? I mean, I will say if you are shopping for clothes, use that code CTP at checkout at Mac Weldon for
Fantastic
20
deal.
for 20% off. I think it's so worth it. Um, and yeah, outside of that, check us out on Twitter at Crash the Pond. Jake is on Twitter at Reindeer Games 91. He has been popping off lately, as have I at Felix underscore Sicard. We're just letting it fly lately. Like these
Might as
ducks
well.
don't
Might as
they
well.
don't really they don't really deserve any better. To be quite honest with you here. So with all of that being said, wishing everybody a great week here. These go up on Monday morning, so hope your Monday goes well. Hopefully maybe we'll get a trade this week. Who knows? So hopefully everybody has a great rest of your day, a great week, and we will talk to you at the next show. Have a good one, everybody.
Bye.